Thank you very much, Sari. My name's Charles Duffy. I'm a member of the church. I'm also a member of Pillar 2, which is focused on strengthening intergenerational communications. And we've kind of been focused on that for a few weeks. And now we have our cleanup hitter, our kind of Babe Ruth, as you might say. A lot of people might know his name, but not what he does. But Hans Riemer is an at-large county council member. There's 4 at-large county council members in the county. Each represents 1 million people, all the residents in this county. That's more people than 5 or 6 states. It's pretty incredible. I did a political TV show for 14 years, and I interviewed everybody from Martin O'Malley to Governor Hogan. But there's a famous quote by Tip O'Neill, who used to be the Speaker of the U.S. House. His famous quote, or one of his famous quotes, was, "All politics is local." And as I did my show, he said that's where the issues are developed, that's where you meet people, that's where the rubber meets the road. But as I did my TV show, I concluded that Montgomery County is like the flip side. All politics here is national. That's kind of where we focus. Even Sari in his sermon today mentioned the presidential election. And I'm just kind of pulling your leg there a little bit, Sari, but
that's why the sermon took so long, Charles.
But here in Montgomery County, there's so much that gets done at the local level: taxes, development, education, so many things. And we're very fortunate to have Hans Riemer. And this county is very diverse. We're now a majority-minority county. There's a lot of brokenness, there's a lot of issues. Maybe we don't see it here at Bradley and Wisconsin Avenue, but as an at-large county council person, Hans sees it every day. Perhaps you can shed light on that and also help the church on this great journey that the church has undertaken. Thank you very much for being here.
All right. Well, good morning. It's really an honor to be here with Sari and with the congregation. I have had a chance recently to meet with leaders from the church about the Bethesda sector plan and the issues, but when I did that, I was wondering to myself, I wonder what is the community like that has come together through this church? And then moments, maybe a day or two later, I received the invitation to come and get a chance to talk with you, and I thought that was very fortuitous. So I'm really glad to be here today, and I wanted to just share some thoughts about some of the issues that I think are really most important in this county right now. As Charles mentioned, I'm an at-large member, so I do represent the whole county, and I really am very challenged always to try to understand in depth and in detail what's going on in the so many wildly divergent community lives and opportunities that we have here. As you know, in Maryland, local government, for the most part, is a county. It's a county government, and I don't know how many of you grew up in Montgomery County. Maybe many of you did, but most people in this county grew up somewhere else, and they're often they expect that they would have a city government that really is their government. But what they don't know is that in Maryland, really, it's the counties. Now, we do have cities within the county that have sort of layers of services that they provide, sometimes totally supplemental to the county, sometimes kind of mixing in with what the county does. But really, we are the local government for your community. And as Charles mentioned, I serve on the committee that handles economic development, planning, housing, zoning, master plans. I serve on the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee. But as the county council, we really do everything as a committee of the whole. So every issue that comes through the council, is an issue, of course, that I have to devote myself to and cast a vote with, integrity and accountability and knowledge and commitment. So it's a great job. It's a wonderful job. I'm not on the ballot on Tuesday, so you don't have to wonder whether I'm going to be pitching you for a vote. I'm not, but I know that we're all so concerned about the election on Tuesday, of course, and I imagine I won't be the only one to say I can't wait for it to be over, and I hope that things improve. I wanted to ask a few questions to help me understand the congregation a little bit. Could I ask you for a show of hands, please, if you are a current or former federal government worker? Federal government. Yes. So many, many hands. Could I have a show of hands if you have testified to the Montgomery County Council? Thank you, Sari. Good, a few hands. Have you sent an email to your county council? All right. Well, I suppose you probably have an email campaign maybe floating around the listservs right now, but good. Have you ever met with a county council member? All right, very good. Have you attended a fundraiser or gone door knocking or made phone calls for a candidate for president this year? What about a candidate for Congress? All right, few good. Well, this is an active, educated community. Now, I would like to ask everyone, if you're able to rise for a moment. Please have a seat if you moved to this county after the year 2010. You moved here after 2010.
Including 2010?
Sure, including 2010. All right. And have a seat if you moved here in the 2000s, like 2000 to 2010. And if you moved here in the 1990s, please have a seat. If you moved here in the 80s, please have a seat. All right. If you moved here in the 70s, please have a seat. Good. And if you moved here in the 60s? Very good. Well, if you moved here in the 50s? All right. You are our champion. Thank you. Oh, well, look, we got several. Thank you. Well, you have seen a lot of change. We have all seen a lot of change, but I think the nature of that change is really what we all have to understand and to grapple with and to think about how we respond to. Because the story of this county has been completely rewritten in the last 15 years. The story of who we are is a completely different story today than it was 15 years ago. And the pace of that change is just, it's awesome, it's challenging, and I don't think that really it's well understood. I think we all know bits and pieces of it, but it takes a lot for a community to kind of congeal with a new sense of self, and that's something I think is very much in process right now. You can see who this county has become in several places in the most powerful way. One of them is on the campus of Montgomery College. Show of hands if you've been in a classroom or in a moment where you were able to engage with students in Montgomery College, recently. Great. The place where, and I think the college, I want to say a few words about the college, but that's an important institution. It's an important space in this county. For me, the most powerful place to be in this county is in a classroom, in a school, in an elementary school, in Wheaton or Silver Spring or Germantown or Montgomery Village or Clarksburg. It's pretty hard to get into a classroom if your kid isn't in the classroom. So I don't expect a lot of hands here, but raise your hand if you've been into a classroom, in a community like that, recently. Thank you. I see a few hands. So I don't mean to be too pointed, but I'm really not talking about Bethesda Elementary, or Burning Tree Elementary. We're talking about schools where we have poverty rates, in the 80 and 90 percentile range in that classroom. So I wanted to share a few statistics about those changes. In 1970, the population of Montgomery County was 522,000. In 2020, it's expected to be about 1,050,000. So we have doubled. more than doubled? Doubled? In 1970, the population of the school system was about 120 to 125,000 students. Actually, really large when you think about that. We're at 500,000 residents, 120,000 kids. Today, with almost 1 million people, or more than 1 million people, the population of the school system is a bit below 160,000 students. In 1969, the population of the school system that was white, any guess on the percentage of the Montgomery County, countywide public school system that was white? Yeah, it was above 90%. It was above 90%. Does anybody know what the percentage is now? We have an educator, I think, in the classroom. Are you an educator? Yeah. 28%. Wow. The largest non-white racial group, or the largest racial group now, is Hispanic. Actually, that's not true. The largest group is still white, but the fastest growing is Hispanic. ESOL. The number of new ESOL enrollments, ESOL is Spanish, is English as a second language. We now have in the county, anyone want to guess what the number of ESOL students is in last year's school? 22,000. 22,000. Of that 150,000, 160,000, 22,000 don't speak English as a first language. You see that, very clearly. There are more kids in Montgomery County who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. There are more kids in Montgomery County public schools who are eligible for free and reduced lunch than there are students in public schools in Washington, D.C. So, that's what this county is grappling with. Now, I don't mean to suggest, by the way, that the kids in our county have, it's a very different life when you're poor in D.C., in my opinion. I think that among the things that we do well, I think we give kids a better start here. But also we aren't suffering with the multi-generational kind of conditions that have happened, in some of the very urban places in this country. But we are at the beginning of what will probably be a long-term trend of having poverty in our community. And so, we need to know how we are going to address that and how to make sure that 20, 30 years from now, the outcome is better. So I guess I wanted to ask for a few thoughts. What kind of community would you describe this county, in the mid-'80s? What kind of words would you use to help characterize what we were about? Could I ask you for sleepy? Yeah? Kind of like a quiet suburban lifestyle? Yeah? It's a great one. Any thoughts?
Wealthy?
Wealthy, Charles, wealthy, absolutely. We were a wealthy, sleepy bedroom community, right? I mean, it was a residential county, basically. It was not so urban, I mean, yeah, what were the urban nodes, really? You had Bethesda, but Bethesda wasn't all that urban even, really. Wasn't very urbanized. It was certainly highly educated, right? What about today? What words would you use to describe Montgomery County today? Diverse, yeah?
County in transition.
A county in transition, absolutely.
Bustling.
Bustling, yes, that's for sure. Congested. We're not talking about colds, yes. Insular, very interesting. Maybe you could share what you mean with that word. That's interesting.
I think we live in a bubble. I don't
Yeah.
think we know what it's like in Kansas, Nebraska,
Sure.
Colorado,
Yeah.
West Coast.
Amen. Insular. Yes. Sure. It's a bubble, you mean, in this part of the county? Yeah. Correct. Right. I understand that feeling. Yeah. I think we are an inclusive community. I think we really were an exclusive community a generation or two ago. Not necessarily, well, actually sometimes by law, unfortunately, but often just by, economic status. But today I think we are an inclusive community. I think we're like a very cosmopolitan community. I mean, people come here from all over the world, and they have children, in our schools, and they come here if they're, the most highly qualified engineers, or if they're the most, disadvantaged construction workers. They all come here, and they have a home here in Montgomery County. But that question to me is a central question when you think about what do we need to be doing to make this county a great place for everybody. You have to really, I think, know who we are. What do you think are some of the, what are those things that we do that you think are the most important? I know that's a very basic question, but it's one that I think, it's a question I pose to myself a lot because I have to work on so many different issue areas. What do you think are the things that we do that are most important for people, for the people in our community? Good education, yeah.
I was going to say just increase our awareness of what's going on in the county.
Yeah, increasing awareness, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. We have affordable housing laws that have a real effect. Whenever you build housing, you must set aside a certain amount into a protected affordable program. And that's not very common. Not a lot of jurisdictions do that. That's big. It's a big, in fact, since we're asked what are the things that we do best, there was a study done out of Harvard University that looked at model policies to help people kind of climb the economic ladder to get more opportunity. And what they found was that kids who are from families that lived in wealthier neighborhoods, because those families were in housing provided through that set-aside program, that those kids their outcomes were better than kids in other parts of the county, even if you throw all the social interventions that you can at kids who live in poor neighborhoods, it's never as effective as a kid living who's the same income living in a wealthier neighborhood. That basically, the thousands of fragments of life that just come together to make up someone's existence are just so much more positive when they live in a stable, upwardly mobile community than when they live in a community with concentrated poverty. And it's why the program that we have, where new development must provide affordable housing, is one of the most powerful policies that we have. Unfortunately, it can only benefit, 15% of the new housing units that's from new construction. So the numbers aren't as large as we would like, but it is one of the most documented effective things that we do. And it's a big issue in this Bethesda sector plan, because every new building in the Bethesda sector plan will have a requirement that 15% of the housing needs to be set aside into an affordable program. I think education, I think the school system is what we do best. It's the most important thing we do from K all the way through Montgomery College. I think that, our school system is highly functioning, and it's a very well-run organization, which isn't to say that it doesn't have its own problems, and every organization does. But I think one of the advantages that we have is generations of effective administration of schools. And it's an organization where you can push, change, positive change through the organization. Start with a vision at the leadership level and have it appear, in the classroom, and have that carry through Montgomery College. Montgomery College is one of the best. It's for me, it's like the Statue of Liberty. It is opportunity for so many thousands of people. There's more than 60,000 students at Montgomery College. It's the #1 destination for graduating Montgomery County schools, public school students who go to school in the state. It's a huge part of our lives. All right, last thoughts on collective impact. So I know what you are doing is going through a process now to try to, focus your collective impact and do what you can to make this community a better place. I come out of, my background is partly from campaigns and politics, and I think about things sometimes in terms of how do you build an organization that can achieve certain outcomes, and what are your measurable, what are your benchmarks? So, you could think about your congregation in those terms. You could think about the number of hours of volunteer labor that people do through the congregation. I mean, not everyone's going to do everything through the congregation, but you could set goals for the number of volunteer hours that you organize. You could set other kinds of impact measures. The number of congregants who get engaged through your organization. You could raise funds for certain causes that you really think are important, and you could, set those goals out and strive towards them over time. You can be, an effective network in and of yourself. I know that you are already in many ways, but I think you're trying to find, you're trying to take it to the next level, right? I urge you to get involved with Action in Montgomery. Does anybody know AIM, Action in Montgomery? I might be stepping into a controversy here. I don't know. But I got to tell you, as a council member, there are very few organizations that are having a bigger effect on what this county is all about than Action in Montgomery. So I see it every day. And I just want to know, if you're fighting for this congregation to get involved, you're fighting a good fight. Because, this year we expanded after-school programming to a middle school that is disadvantaged. We are building a universal after-school program. And this year, we expanded actually to an elementary school and a middle school program, largely thanks to the political pressure that Action in Montgomery brought to bear in the county council. We expanded affordable housing in Bethesda. Not in the Bethesda sector plan, but in Westport. Very controversial, I know. But we expanded affordable housing. There were very few voices fighting for more affordable housing in Bethesda. Action in Montgomery was there, and their people were there, and they had a powerful impact. So if you're here in this room today, I think you're here because you want to make this community a better place for everybody to live. And that's what Action in Montgomery does day after day. I think we need to build policies that increase affordable housing, and I think we need universal affordable childcare and universal affordable after-school programming in Montgomery County. And the days are gone when kids can just go home after school and ride their bike on the cul-de-sac, until dinner. That's just not reality anymore. And we've got to get kids into enriching opportunities every day to keep them on the track to success. So that, I think, is an agenda that this church and Action in Montgomery, separately or together, can be involved in. Think about creating a scholarship. You could have a St. John scholarship for Montgomery College. Can you get 1 or 2 students a year the opportunity to, get that launching pad into their life? Montgomery County has a senior fellows program. I know many of you are retired government, retired public sector, private sector too. You can work at the county council on policy issues and actually have pay. It's just basically to cover your expenses. Or you can work for the county executive. There are about a dozen positions every year where people can come in and actually help with community outreach or policy development in areas that they're expert in. So look into that. I'd be happy to share more information about that. You could start a fellows program. You could have a St. John's fellow who is a paid position, someone who wants to get involved, doesn't need to make $60,000 a year, but could do it, for sort of a stipend, and can be placed at local nonprofits. That's something to think about. But whatever you do, I think we all know we have to be engaged at every level. And the federal government, has a powerful impact on our lives. The state government has a powerful impact on our lives. The county government has a powerful impact on our lives. The nonprofit sector has a powerful impact on our lives. We feel them all in our community. You know, a lot of people say to me, well, local government, that's really where you have the effect in the neighborhood. I don't believe that. I think I see the effect of federal policies in my neighborhood every day. You know, tax policy spills on down in terms of economic opportunity every day. But every one of these layers has to be moving in the right direction, you know, if we're going to make this world that we live in better. So that's our job. And thank you for your interest, and thank you for inviting me to be with you today.
We're going to take some questions. I might, I think we have about 10 minutes. I might start with the first question. And you know, the whole vision process, Hans, is called How Can We Make a Difference? And I noticed from the church website and just learning to get prepared for this program, the church is already so involved in many different nonprofits, is partnering with so many. And I think the visioning process should be called How Can We Make More of a Difference?
Right.
But anyway, can you see out there, you talked about partnering with these other non-for-profits, but can you see a niche out there, a void that maybe the church can play a leadership role in?
Sure. Well, I mean, that is why I raised the issue of Action in Montgomery, because that organization is playing a leadership role, and there is, you know, you will have a more powerful leadership role working in coalition with other leadership organizations and social impact organizations. You know, I think our most urgent needs are in the children and youth arena, and I think there are more opportunities there than you could ever imagine. It's hard to link up with a specific school. I was thinking of recommending that maybe you try to get in touch with a PTA at a particular school, but it's really hard to do that. You know, we've got the Bethesda sector plan in front of us now. That's your community. You know, there's a need for you there, and you know, I don't know. I've tried to suggest a lot of different ways that I think you could get involved and make a big difference. So.
Okay, we're going to open it up to questions, and no questions about, hey, there's a pothole in front of my house, can we get it fixed? I mean, let's kind of keep it focused on the discussion.
So my question would be, if there's not a city government in Bethesda, there is the commercial group, Bethesda Urban Partnership.
Yeah.
Is there any way, and not that we're not focused on Bethesda, we're really thinking of the whole county, but just to follow up on that kind of a question, is there anything there that can be linked with this whole question of support? Or should we look more toward action in Montgomery, which I don't know anything about, by the way?
Well, the question was about BUP. You know, you're all familiar with BUP, the red shirt team in downtown Bethesda that takes care of, you know, the streets and organizes social festivals, and I think it even runs like the bus network and everything. That's funded with a supplementary property tax on the property owners here, and I don't think that they would be very supportive of sort of expanding beyond the mission of how do you make downtown Bethesda function better, and I think that's legitimate. So I wouldn't, you know, seek to carry that afield, but you know, I don't mean to push you on Action in Montgomery. Well, I do, but I don't. You know, that's not the only way. It's just that is a way, right? And if you don't want to do that, you know, just what I want you to know is that people organizing are having a huge effect on the policies in your community. And people organizing through congregations are having a huge effect on the policies in your community. So if you feel like there's a different path you'd like to do, you know, go for it. But, you know, don't question whether you can have an impact. Because as a county council member, I'm telling you that there are people active through their churches that are having a huge impact right now. They are changing the lives of young people and of seniors and of the whole community right now. You know, and in 5 years, the measurable impact of what the last 5-10 years of their activity is going to be just going to be huge. You know, I don't know that there will be an organization that will have as much to say, have done as much. But you know, another one, Jews United for Justice. Boy, Jews United for Justice is always at the county council. They are there. Every social justice issue that comes up, they are providing testimony. They are holding us accountable. They are publicizing our votes. They are putting us on the line, and they are supporting people who make tough decisions, and they're giving a hard time to people they think aren't making the good decisions. And that's what it's all about, friends. If you want to move, you want to have an impact at scale, if you want to affect thousands of people, in a positive way, you know, that's what it's all about. So that's another example of being active through faith that I think is among the most impressive efforts that are happening right now in Montgomery County.
Questions?
Even if term limits does not pass on Tuesday,
Yeah.
it still appears that there will be a mass exodus
Yes.
of the county council in 2 years because everybody's going to run for county executive.
Yeah.
There likely will be a lot of new blood.
Yeah.
Could there also be a change of direction?
Yes. If you didn't hear the question in the back, you know, it's likely that 3, 4, or 5 council members will be running for county executive in 2018. And if term limits passes, 5 members of the county council will be disqualified from running again anyway. There's a lot of overlap between who would likely be running for county executive and who would be disqualified from running. So, you know, with 4 or 5 new members of the county council, would you have a change of direction? Absolutely, potentially. I don't know what, I mean, you didn't specify whether you thought, I guess if you say, is there a change of direction, I'm assuming you think we might need a change of direction. I don't know. You know, but I can definitely say to you that the decisions that we make are a function of the people who are making the decisions. And, you know, you could easily get a council that bends much more in one direction or another as a result of the 2018 election. Yeah, I'm sort of wild-eyed and excited about what the next county council is going to be like. I expect that I'm likely running for re-election rather than running for county executive. You know, I'll be very interested to see who I serve with. I think there's going to be a lot of power politics. I think a lot of people are going to be trying to, you know, take over the county council and to push it into one direction or another. So we'll just see how that all works out.
Any more questions? Anyway, it looks, John, any questions? Or?
No, I think this has been very interesting. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I see a question there.
Another question.
Back. Oh, Joe.
I'll go to the federal election.
Yeah.
But we don't know people like the way we grew up and we talked about things, and you could do it with, I think, with more rationality. And today, because we are so blue, if you will, it's hard to go out and find somebody that you can learn about how this anger and the divisiveness that is going on, you know, what's that all about? And to be able, that's part of what I mean by being in a bubble.
Yeah.
And I think that's really an important issue. And in the church, I mean, by and large, it's an echo chamber. And somehow, you know, we can do all you talk about in terms of helping the poor and being more diverse, but getting across that ideological diversity is something that I think is, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, to that point, like, I don't like to argue federal politics on my Facebook page anymore. You know, I just, there's not really we don't live in worlds anymore where people are persuadable within our own community. It's very strange, and we're all in an echo chamber. Those echo chambers even carry down to the most personal level, I think, and it is a real problem. I think what the federal system needs is a vast area where, you know, practical ideas get exchanged and people try to move the country forward instead of just digging in and fighting. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I really don't. You know, it's very concerning to me personally. You know, I feel like the federal government at this point is just broken, and I don't know when it's going to get fixed. So as for what we can do here, I think our job is really to do the best we can with the resources that we have, and to demonstrate that communities working together can solve problems, and whether that's through, a neighborhood organization, or through county government, or through congressional, electing members of Congress, whatever it is. But there isn't a great answer to how do you reach across the divide when that divide isn't in your community. We don't have that divide really here. And I was up in Potomac yesterday, and I was at a park opening, and I thought to myself, I bet most of the people here are Republican, but we didn't talk politics. So wish I had an answer. It's a great point.
Hans, thanks so much. This is really educational. We're coming from a place where we're trying to make an impact, and we believe that the whole reason we started a vision process is we thought that if we are trying to be involved in many different ways, we're going to spread ourselves thin, and we're not going to make kind of that real impact that we want to make. And so we decided that a part of being a local church in a local community is that we have a responsibility to take care of the community in which we are ministering. Like I live in Silver Spring, but there are churches in Silver Spring that I hope will care for their community, and we're trying really to focus on Bethesda Chevy Chase. Now, many of the speakers that we've had come have shed light on the needs of the poverty and some of the low-income issues in the broader Montgomery County.
Yeah.
Not so much here.
Sure.
I like to keep pressing a little bit and to say, but we know that even wealthy people have poverty, but it's a different type of poverty. And I come from the personal belief that if rather than St. John's saying like, here's our resources and we're going to try to make a big difference in Montgomery County, if we can create an entire community in Bethesda Chevy Chase that cares for the entire county, because we're growing toward more compassion and kindness and seeing beyond ourselves and taking that long view, then we can make even a bigger impact. And so my question is, are there any things that you see in Bethesda Chevy Chase? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, that have to do with the wealthy and have to do with ways that where you might see some poverty, or even arenas of expansion that we can move into in this area right here, where no one is addressing, or a way that we might be able to make a difference. These are some of the big questions that we're asking, and we're not looking for the answer or a silver bullet, but any direction that you can give us in that kind of area, that would be amazing. So,
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I think if you, there are parts, first of all, there are parts of Silver Spring that are a part of that Chevy Chase community. The Rosemary Hills, Littonsville, that whole group, that community feeds into BCC High School. It's part of this community historically, and there's tremendous poverty in Rosemary Hills, Littonsville, because there's a lot of affordable housing. And wherever housing is within reach of people who are low income, you have low income people, and that's a good thing. So I guess I'm not sure, what the boundaries are in your mind about the community, but it's right here. There are Housing Opportunity Commission buildings, which is our guaranteed affordable programs, different programs that we have here in downtown Bethesda. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the Waverly House, for example, right on East-West Highway. But that's a large community, older community. You might, and I'd be happy to facilitate if you don't have a partnership with that building. That would be something to think about. There are other, affordable communities within Bethesda that are sort of long-standing affordable, but not guaranteed set-aside affordable, kind of market rate affordable. We know that more and more people are living here as they age, and I think that's a natural, I know you've been looking at that already, I think that's a natural question. The first thing I thought actually when I met with Charles to talk about this was, do you have a senior village? You know, could the church sponsor a senior village, which is basically just a grassroots community network that meets the needs of the people in the community related to aging? But you actually are covered by a senior village that the town of Chevy Chase sponsors. But I think you ought to look at that model, and maybe there's some areas where your congregation really draws from that aren't covered by the town of Chevy Chase sponsored village, because I just think it's really a powerful, powerful thing. It's not really a political organizing, but it's true organizing. It's true community organizing. And I think it's really, really important. I think, you know, it's one of the things I'm most excited about. So I would look at senior villages, and, you know, and I'd be happy to facilitate if you're not already talking with the Housing Opportunities Commission. You know, we have a new affordable development that's coming online at Chevy Chase Lakes. That's a big one. You know, that's a Housing Opportunities Commission building. You know, maybe that's a direction to go in, is to sit down with some of the public housing providers that are within your community boundaries, more or less, and talk about what those needs are and how you can, you know, maybe get some new congregants and expand the boundaries of your community into those buildings as well.
Thank you. I think that's all the time we have. Stealing from a term used by one of the presidential, do we have very, very quickly?
PTSAs, but I know that BCC High School has a BCC Cares division. They're trying to raise money for poorer families for Thanksgiving. It's not just for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
They have boxes in their lobby every day. There's clothing drives. There's BCC or Bethesda Cares right in our community. The Greater Littonsville Sector Plan was a huge, has brought our community, which is maybe a little bit more in Silver Spring, but is part of this community, if you will,
Right.
too. There's been some divisiveness, but the questions remain the same. What do we do? How much do we want in our backyard? How much are we willing to give? How much are we willing to open ourselves to change? But I would say you go into any school, Bethesda or otherwise, and Bethesda has lots of problems right under our noses, and if you want to open yourselves up to that, there is need galore.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it would be so powerful to sit down with the PTA at BCC High School and talk about the needs that they identify and be a partner to that PTA. I think that would be something really worth doing. And being an ally to the school counselors, you know, there are people who work at those high schools who know every family, and there are people in the elementary schools who know every family that's in need. And there are families in need, of course, at Bethesda Elementary and everywhere. But, you know, if you can have a dialogue with the schools in your community, you know, they will tell you, we need $50 cards, gift cards to Target for Christmas, because there's families that don't have anything under the Christmas tree. So that kind of thing, you know, the PTAs and the schools are the organizations that are really the most kind of in touch.
Thank you.
All right, Charles.
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Really appreciate how busy you are, and join us on this church journey. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.